I made another survival horror game, this time in 3 days for Ludum Dare 53. I collaborated with Angela He, who did the art, story, and sound. For this jam, I wanted to try out a character controller idea I've had. Left arrow steps your left foot, right arrow right foot, and holding back arrow lets you step backwards. This is how you move, turn, and aim. For the environment, I set up a modified version of Endoparasitic's environment system, a 2D world with pseudo 3D walls and props. Angela designed and made the art for the player and enemy characters, and I got that implemented. The design idea for them was that there is a supernatural rot that mutates people into animalistic humanoids. The player character is mutated in a way that's paralyzed their right arm, and their left arm is a slender robot arm that's too weak to hold a gun, but agile enough to reload one. Code-wise, the enemies are basic zombies, but they use the same movement system as the player. The way this works is that they get a path to the player, then check if the next point on that path is to their left or right, and then perform a right or left step accordingly. I used procedural animation for character legs. The pivot foot stays still, but rotates over time using this curve. The stepping foot interpolates through 3 positions, start, intermediate, and final, using this curve over time as the interpolation weight. This curve makes so at the beginning, the foot stays on the ground and looks like it's pushing, then quickly swings forward before landing on the ground. It looks a little awkward though, since the feet have to be wide apart, because if they're too close together, you can't move very fast. I also made a simple leg IK system where each leg rotates to face its foot and is scaled based on the distance to it. For combat, I made 3 guns, a pistol, double barrel shotgun, and SMG. Each gun has different amounts of recoil, pushing your right foot back, requiring you to adjust your aim after shots. I also wanted to have a tactile reload system, so I made each gun have an arrow key pattern you have to input to reload it. I tried to make patterns that flowed nicely and were memorable, so it would feel good to master them. My favorite is the shotguns. To animate the reloading, I made the robot arm IK to 4 different positions on your gun based on the last reload input. After that, I threw together some VFX like smoke, sparks, muzzle flashes, and ejecting shells using textures from Angela, and the game really started to come together and feel great. To make blood splatters more impactful, I decided not to use particle effects, but instead made so damaging something spawns blood sprites at a small scale, moves them away quickly, and then instantly scales them up. By varying the scale, spawn time, and travel distance, it makes it appear like globs of blood sailing through the air before splattering on the floor. At this point, Angela had finished the game's tile set and a collection of environmental detail elements, and so with the look of the game coming together, it was time to take on the big challenge of actually putting in content. The theme of this Ludum Dare was delivery. We talked about maybe using that in a birth context, saying that there was this weird alternate reality being born into the regular world, and the player is exploring that. But ultimately, we ended up going with a simple interpretation by just having the player deliver some samples to an NPC. Angela wrote all the story and dialogue. For displaying it, I made a note pop-up for quick exposition stuff and a super basic dialogue system for NPCs. For conversations, when you walk near an NPC, it triggers a fade out and you get a full screen view of their character art and some scrolling dialogue. Angela had written the story with a non-linear structure in mind, where the player goes down separate paths to collect samples to deliver to a scientist NPC who's been overgrown with rot and can't move. However, I thought a non-linear game would be too difficult for a game jam, as we wouldn't have time to playtest everything properly. So I made a fake non-linear setup. Basically, there's this hub room where you meet the scientist NPC, and to continue, there are 3 elevators you can go through. However, no matter which one you go through, it will always take you to the same next level. And when you finish that section and return to the hub room, you start in front of the elevator that you went through, and its door is closed. And then this repeats for every elevator you go through. This allowed me to easily make and playtest a linear level structure with the illusion of a non-linear level structure on first playthrough. The only extra feature I had to add was saving and loading the hub level state. For the meat of the game, I crunched out a bunch of levels. Besides the tutorial section and the hub level, I set a goal of having 2 levels per gun, so 6 total. The process was, I would throw together each level, playtest it, and then hand it off to Angela, who would decorate it with detail elements and colors. Finally, audio. Aside from me reusing some gun sounds from Endoparasitic, Angela did most of the sound design and ended up doing a lot of soothing, almost angelic sounds in music. One audio challenge I had was that the enemies have this alert sound that plays when they spot you. I needed a way to make it clear when multiple enemies spot you at once, so I made so each enemy randomly pitches their alert sound before playing it. And as a side effect, this gave a really cool discordant choir effect when you enter combat. And that pretty much sums up the game's development. We titled it Neural Rot, published to itch and the Ludum Dare site, and started getting feedback on the game. The biggest issue was Godot. We were using Godot 4 for this jam, and unfortunately, exported versions of the game had a lot of mysterious crashes that I think were caused by Vulkan issues. I ended up having to patch the game with an autosave feature as a workaround, so when you get a crash, at least you can continue where you left off. The next biggest issue was camera rotation. I don't typically like tank controls as it's very awkward to move the player character when you're facing down. So I made the camera rotate to face forward always, but this was very dizzying for a lot of players and did not feel good to look at. I ended up just adding an option to disable camera rotation, but I think the best thing to have done would have been to have a dedicated button that aligns the camera to the player's forward view when you press it, and otherwise the camera doesn't rotate at all. And that's it for this Ludum Dare. Be sure to follow Angela He and check out her work. We're planning to turn this into a full game, so please comment with feedback and suggestions.